is that the internet cooperates with us. Yes. Hi,
Hello.
Trevor.
How
Hi.
are how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing so good. Better
Oh,
now that I get to see you.
oh, good. I was nervous. I'm like, I hope I didn't mix up the times because I know we were just chatting in the DM. And I'm like, okay, I still get confused with mountain time. Mountain time and central time, are they the same or they're 1 hour apart?
They're in I think they're an hour apart. I don't know Central Time well enough to tell you, but yeah, I'm on Mountain Standard Time.
So you are in Utah.
Yep, I am.
So Utah and Denver, I mean Colorado, mountain time.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm
Yep.
learning. I'm learning because we've we've been to Denver before, and I know I kind of got confused with the time. So thank you so much
Of course. Thank you for having me.
for making the time out. Everybody, this is Trevor Hanson. Trevor, congratulations on your wedding. It seems like you just got married, or maybe recently because you just got back from your honeymoon.
Yeah, so back in March I got married
Congratulations.
to the
Congrats.
best girl in the whole wide world, I should add.
I'm sure she is. No, no, no. I'm sure she is. I'm pretty sure she is because I don't know how I found you. I think it was a day that I was just looking around, looking for some dating, what's it called, dating coaches that I could invite to my tea time. And I saw your platform and I watched the first reel and I just got hooked. I'm like, this guy knows what he's talking about.
Thank you.
No, honestly, I'm like, this guy knows what he's talking about. I'm going to try my luck. That day, I think I sent messages to about 5 of you, and 2 of you responded. So I'm so honored that you're here because a lot of people need to know your platform. So my community, please follow Trevor now because I know you're all in my DMs asking about dating advice and marriage advice, and you want to know who is a high value man, who is a this, who is a that, who is a I've learned a lot from Trevor's page. So please follow Trevor right now. Now, Trevor is a couples therapist. He was previously in the corporate world. I believe you worked at Tesla in the tech industry for a while. And
Yep.
then you kind of just felt some passion and some connection to helping couples, and you can tell us a bit more. And now you're helping couples, mostly couples, helping them with premarital counseling, but also newly married couples, right? So tell us briefly how you got into doing this, how you got into couples therapy.
Yeah, great question. So I was working at Tesla, and at the time, it was seemed like a great career path. Other things were going well, and then they laid me off as well as a bunch of other managers across the company. And at that same time, I had a really challenging relationship that ended, and kind of the aftermath, the emotional rubble of all of that. Um, it sent me to go to therapy. I decided, you know what, I'm going to go check this out. I'm going to learn about what it's like. And through that experience, I realized that the healing resources that therapists provide are incredibly powerful and so wonderful, and it's something that I could connect with. And I spent some time really trying to ponder on the idea that says, should I change my career? That seems like a big scary move, especially because, I was doing great financially in my other career and things were pretty good, and I could probably go back to something similar, not necessarily at Tesla right away because they made some changes there, but I took the decision based on following something that I was passionate about, that I felt like I could do well at. And I took the decision to God and asked him, I said, what can I do here? And the answer feels like it was a big yes. And it's proven to be the right path for me. And so I'm incredibly grateful to have started that path.
I love your story. Thanks for sharing. I love your story because I wrote this down that your challenge made you get into this passion. It's so funny how you said you had a difficult relationship. You went to therapy personally, and that inspired you to start helping people. And it's so funny. I got into all of this work after my divorce. So again, I don't know if you know my story. I'm not going to bore you with my story because you are the highlight for today. But my challenges with my divorce, because I was married for 15 years and I had been with my ex for 8 years prior. So really I was in a 23-year relationship that still ended. And I got remarried in 2020, but all those challenges actually prepared me for what I'm doing now. So this is our first lesson of the day. If you're out there, you're going through some challenges now, as you heal and as you find your way through those challenges, remember that the reason you went through those challenges is probably because there are people out there who need to learn how you survived those challenges. Okay, so that's a really good reason why you should put your head up high and say, okay, I'm going through this now so that I can help people later on, right?
Yeah.
So here we are, and I love that you mentioned God, because it does sound like we're on the same path with that. That you're a God lover, and maybe I don't know if you're yeah. I'm not overly religious, but I do I do credit God and I do thank God for everything that I'm going through today. So the topic is dating tips and marriage tips. We're going to kind of just put them together because you specialize more in marriage tips, but they're related. You can't get married until you know how to date. So
Right.
let me ask you this question first, Trevor, though. This is just something that popped into my head before I came on here. I feel like, and I'm Nigerian American, as you can tell. So I wasn't born and raised here. I left Nigeria at the age of 23. So naturally, a lot of my platform is African women,
Yep.
African American women. So, and I think this is all across. Why do women tie their worth so much to being in a relationship?
Man, I think it's kind of a natural human thing to do, is to tie your worth to our relationships. I mean, it's the place where, as we grow up, how people treat us, it feels like a manifestation of who we are and our value. And some of us were lucky to grow up with parents who were very affirming and very kind and gentle with us and helped us to feel loving and worthy. And others maybe not so much. And it's not to say that it's based on our parents strictly. I think it's just a human thing to do, is to tie our worth to how we're perceived by others, or our ability to be in a relationship. It's so easy to do that. To say specifically, you know, um, why women in particular feel that it's important to be in a relationship in order to feel valuable. I'm not sure. I think it depends on the individual. Um, but I I mean, I think that women are incredibly nurturing and caring, and there's some natural elements there, maybe just from biology itself. That you look at the biological psychology, meaning like how does our history and evolutionary biology tie to our psychology? And women, they, in nature even, they're the ones who tend to stick around with the kids. They're the ones who tend to have to carry the burden of pregnancy and birth and childbearing in nature, and historically that's been the case. And I think maybe part of the evolutionary psychology that has been developed is that women tend to be really, really nurturing and loving. And if they're not receiving a lot of that back, and it's not to say this isn't true for men at all, but if they're not receiving that back, that might be a difficult situation. It kind of conflicts with that idea that says, if I'm not nurtured, if I'm not loved, if I'm not in a close relationship, then I don't have worth. I think it might go even deeper than just psychological thoughts. I think it might be tied to our biology a bit.
I love that answer. You're so smart. Honestly, Trevor, you're so smart. So then you're right. We're wired to be nurturers, right?
Mm.
We're wired to be nurturers and to be givers. But that, again, from my experience and from the women I coach and who come to my DM, and pardon me for my cough drop. My allergies are really bothering me. I don't want to keep coughing in you guys' faces.
That's
but
okay.
but how do we as women, how do we balance that nurturing and that overly caring personality so that it doesn't count against us in relationships. Because sometimes we overdo it and it could be smothering. It could be
Mm,
smothering, or I just, because if you're giving to somebody who isn't giving you back, that's where the problem comes. So can you talk on that? How do we balance that so that it doesn't count against us in relationships, in romantic relationships?
yeah, that's a great question. And I will say in any question that I answer, I feel like there's always this caveat that says it depends. It depends
Yeah.
on your situation. It depends on your life and all that. To think that I have like the right answer would be a little bold. But
Yes.
things that come to my mind are typically in couples relationships, we see a pursuer role, the one who maybe pursues, try to fix, really maybe asking for things. Well, not necessarily asking. Oftentimes it comes out as even criticism or maybe being a little too much. And then there's the withdrawer role, and the one who kind of shuts off, closes down. Men typically fit into that second camp, and women fit into the first camp of pursuers. And in a dating relationship, um, it's a little challenging because knowing like, okay, am I giving and am I giving too much, and then losing myself in a way that's a pursuit. It's a little different than I think what I first described, but that pursuit, I think what's really important is to start to get clear on what do you need in a relationship as well as what do you want to give, and also trying to tune into what your new partner, your new dating interest, how they feel appreciated, how they feel loved, and learning how to maybe speak that language. We talk about the love languages. You don't have to bombard them with all five all the time. You've got to find maybe the one or the two that they like and just give them a little bit. Like give them enough to maintain the relationship. And as the commitment increases, the giving can also increase. I think when those aren't in line, it gets a little wacky, and maybe people feel overwhelmed by all of the giving. They feel smothered, but kind of looking at like, okay, I want to give them more, but let me check in with the relationship, check in, kind of just get a gut check, and also asking wise people around you. Hey, I really want to call him more often. Man, I really want to invite him to go do this thing. Um, do you do you feel like this is maybe a little much? Having somebody who's outside of it, that's not emotionally involved, can sometimes be helpful.
Wonderful. I love that. So checking in with the relationship. How are you feeling about the relationship, right? Okay, I'm giving. Is this man also giving me back? Am
Mm-hmm.
I feeling good? Am I feeling loved? Am I feeling wanted? Am I feeling adored by this guy? Or am I wondering, how come I'm texting and he's not replying? How come he's been
Yeah.
postponing the dates for the last 2 weeks? How come?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I,
Right?
I think it's important too with that question of how come. It can be accusatory, where it's like, how come he's not doing that? Or it can be curious because maybe there's a good reason. Maybe there's something going on there. Maybe he doesn't express love in the same way as you, or maybe there's a lot of things happening in his life. And so I think curiosity is always a thing that I teach people. Go back to being curious, because if you're curious, it's so much easier to handle everything. My spouse is coming home late. How come she's coming home late? Okay, maybe I could change the tone. How come she's coming home late? Maybe she got pulled over. Maybe her tire's flat. Maybe she just got stuck chatting with a friend and she had a good time. Or maybe he's not texting me back. Oh, I wonder why. Wonder why that is. Like, is this a deal breaker? Should it be? What more information do I need? I think just slowing down and getting curious when you're asking that question of how come.
I like that. Slowing down, calming down, breathing, giving him or her the benefits of doubt. Or is it benefits of the doubt? I can never remember if there's the there. Benefits of doubt or benefits of the doubt. I don't know.
Either way, we got it.
Either way, yeah. Being curious. But Trevor, at what point does that curiosity and giving that benefit of the doubt or benefits of doubt, at what point does that become, okay, am I being silly here? This guy is
Mm,
clearly showing me that he's
mm,
not interested in me, because that
yeah.
has to come at some point.
It does. It does. And I think it's genuine curiosity, not just full-blown benefit of the doubt. I think benefit of the doubt is an element to it that sometimes we forget. But genuine curiosity really wants to know the answer to the question. You really want to make a decision. And I think having an openness and a willingness to accept whatever the answer is the first position. Because if you're locked into just trying to cover up everything that, you know, he's doing or not doing, because like, yeah, maybe he's not interested in you, but you're making up stories and excuses in your head for why that's not true, because that's what you want, is you want him and that's it. That's a painful place to be in. You're going to set yourself up for hurt. On the other hand, it's really dangerous to say, oh, he's not interested, he's the worst, or I'm not going to have him, or this isn't going to work out, I'm just so hopeless, because that might not be true either. I think being open and willing to accept all outcomes is incredibly important when asking that question, so that when you get the information, maybe it's really consistent. Yeah, he's not texting you back, or maybe he's making up a lot of excuses. Okay, like, I'm in a position to accept that because I've already prepared myself. I have the information. Now I can make that decision.
This is wonderful. I'm going to stop here. I usually don't do this, but I want you to tell people how they can come and work with you, because you are obviously very, very good at what you do. So do you coach people? How does this work? So if there's somebody listening or watching the replay and they're like, oh, this guy knows what he's talking about, I want to go to him for some kind of dating advice or coaching, how can they work with you?
Yeah, great question. So I think the first thing you can do is get all the free stuff that I put out there on my Instagram and TikTok and YouTube. And it's all under the handle The Art of Healing by Trevor. And the next layer that you can do is, I mean, you can send me a DM there. I'm pretty dang good at actually responding to most DMs. Additionally, you can visit me on trevorthetherapist.com. And there I just have a little intake form where you can reach out to me and just tell me a little bit about yourself if you're interested in therapy. I am a bit limited, especially in the United States, where I can only work in certain states. I can work in the state of Utah not Wyoming yet. We're kind of getting there, but Utah and Hawaii. Internationally, it's a little bit more open. So feel free to reach out to me that way. But yeah, those are a few things. And then additionally, I'm going to be launching an online course that teaches a lot of communication skills for building secure relationships. Because when I'm in therapy, there's often times where I'm kind of hoping, I'm crossing my fingers and I'm saying, oh, I really like it if he were to say this to her in this way and her to say it in this way. But I'm not quite as explicit in therapy. And so in this course, I want to outline really explicitly what are the elements that make healthy, secure communication and help increase connection. So those are a handful of ways that you can work with me or find my information.
Wonderful. So now let's go on to the next question, because I also want to be respectful of your time. This is why I stopped, so that you could tell people how to find you.
That's okay.
So Trevor, are there any must-have traits in men that women should be looking for? Now, let me rephrase that. I know that we're all different. Like after my divorce and, you know, when I was still dating, you know, the 10 years I was divorced and single, I was dating on and off. And then I decided to take 2 years off, completely off dating. And that really helped me figure out the kind of man I wanted, who I thought I would be compatible with. And I kept changing the list and the journaling back and forth. So I know that we all have specific things we need, but are there some common must-haves that all women should be looking for in a man?
Yeah, definitely. Well, and I think a lot of the attributes that I think are really, really helpful in a relationship and can provide closeness come down to things. There's a whole list, and to expect you're going to find a guy with the whole list is a kind of a challenging thing. We learn these things throughout our lives, a lot of us. I think the willingness to learn, the willingness to just a humility and a willingness to try to learn new things, to try to be more gentle maybe, or maybe a willingness, because I'm thinking about all the elements of a healthy relationship. One, forgiveness. Is he willing to try to be forgiving? Two, understanding. Like, is he willing to sit and understand and listen to you? Or is he willing to share what he's feeling? You know, vulnerability, that's another element of these. And, you know, or another element of a successful relationship could be intentionally trying to connect, you know, going out of your way to to be connecting. Like my wife the other day just came up to me randomly and it felt different. She just paused, she grabbed me and she goes, I really love, and she said something, some reason why she chose me, basically. She's like, I love that you do this. And I was like, oh my gosh, like you just filled up
Yeah.
my cup. That was amazing. And a willingness to do that. So I think it comes down to willingness, flexibility, all of that. Because to think you're going to find a guy who knows how to do all those things right off the bat, it's a little challenging for sure. We haven't learned that. But I think a lot of people can learn those healthy ways of communicating and relating and being in a relationship.
So those are really tough traits to find, Trevor. Yeah. You know, again, I'm not saying that it's hard to find a good man, but everything you described on here has to do with a lot of humility.
Yes, tons of
Yeah,
it.
you know,
Yes.
I would group all everything you talked about: forgiveness, vulnerability, willingness to try, willingness to be gentle. All that comes with humility. And as humans,
Mm-hmm.
we're not very humble people. So how can women, because I can almost read the minds of women now. They're going to be saying, how can I be vulnerable when he doesn't love me? How can I be vulnerable when I don't feel adored or loved or cared by him? So talk to me. How can women start to navigate what they're really looking for, and how can they make their expectations realistic?
Yeah, that is a great question. I think in early stages of dating or kind of dating in general, it would look very different than in a committed relationship. If you're in a married relationship, getting to a place where you can be vulnerable is kind of one piece of the question that I'm hearing. And then the other piece is what's realistically some things that we can expect or look for
Mhm.
in a man. And honestly, I I don't think it's unrealistic to think we can find someone who's willing to be humble, who's willing to, and usually humility and confidence, they sound like they're conflicting, but they're truly not. They're actually the very same thing, because when we are
Yes.
overly when you start to get cocky. When you start to get cocky, it comes from a place of insecurity. If you find a
Yes.
guy and you
Oh,
think he's confident, because he struts his stuff and he seems cool, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's confident. It actually probably means that he's not confident and he's fearful. So he wants everyone to think that he's cool. But the guy who is confident is most likely truly confident, is also most likely really humble and willing to accept feedback, willing to accept all of those things. And so I think that's a huge thing.
Trevor, we might as
Also,
well
find
just
someone who's
we might as well just end the live here, because you just spilled out gold, diamonds for women. You just spilled it out. Because I'm telling you, and I'm not just showing off. My dad was the most humble man I've ever met. Humble. My mom was a little bit of a troublemaker, but I noticed, because they were together until they both passed away in their 80s, but they matched each other so well, because my dad will just say, when she's there talking, and my dad will just say, okay, all right, that's okay. All right, okay. And then he'll look at us and he'll say, IYABO, please go and make your mother some tea, okay? And you get some crackers, and you get her some crackers. And he's just there with his hands together like this as she's talking, and and then at the end of the day, if she doesn't get a response from him, she forgets about it, and then she starts getting playful, and then she's like, you're not going to respond to me, right? And then everybody just starts laughing. So imagine if when she's talking, he also starts returning that, it's just what you just said is
yeah.
gold. But
I also think
yeah.
what's important here is that for my strong in personality women who are on this call, it's important to realize that if you have a man who's really humble, maybe like your dad, that you could create a power differential in your relationship that is not healthy. The point where you are boss and he is serving you is not what we're looking at. We're looking at two equal partners who love one another, listen, and respond. And so kind of checking yourself, you're like, if I kind of wear the pants per se in the relationship sometimes, like I need to take a little bit of step back and see like, you know, am I taking power from him? Is he able to voice his needs? Is he able to step up to the plate? And when do I need to be humble? Because it's not just men that need to be humble. The women also need that humility.
Yes, yes, yes. Hello, hello, my lady friends out there. I know that I learned that as well. I know that, and if you want to be with a masculine man, as most of us want, you have to learn how to balance those feminine and those masculine traits. Trevor, yeah, you are just wonderful. But I love what you just said. Men who are cocky, who are ego driven, who are like very bossy and very, and this is why women are always saying all men are narcissists, you know, but not all men are narcissists. That's not true.
No.
So is it like, are you the one with low self-esteem? Or is it that all men are narcissists? I tell women, I'm like, check yourself out, because if you're, all men cannot be narcissists. So, yeah, but
No.
I love what you just said about the cockiness. Now, somebody asked a question, and I want to be respectful of your time. Do we have 5 more minutes, 10 more minutes?
Yeah, go ahead. Let's go.
Somebody asked the question and said, when they don't give you time and say they're busy, what do you do? But they stay online during a busy day.
Well, in a dating situation, my mind says, like, it's hard to give blatant, blunt advice because I don't know your situation, right? I think that's the hardest part of any of these things. But if they say they're busy consistently, they're ignoring you, you know that they're still online, just goofing off on Instagram or something, but they said they're busy, probably means they're not interested. It probably means that God, the universe, whatever you believe in, is preparing somebody else for you.
Thank you. Another question. For me, it's just really hard to get a guy that sees life from my perspective. Dating world is just crazy right now. Well, I guess that's a statement. It's not a question, but she's saying she can't find a guy to see life from her perspective.
Yeah, that is really hard. It can be hard, especially with how different and polarizing a lot of people's views are about things today. That can be a little bit challenging. But I do know that we all have a deep longing and a need for love and connection, and that includes guys. And so to say it's hopeless is not true. It is not true. It may take time, but I guess I'm trying to rally hope in whoever said that and say, patience, be curious, be patient, and know that like it's not a hopeless cause.
Trevor, do men generally prefer ambitious, high achieving, financially independent women, or women who just mostly take care of the home?
I think it's going to depend on culture, upbringing, where they're at. I think being either type of woman is a beautiful, wonderful thing to do. And you're going to fit the right guy based on who you are. And so I think to say men prefer one or the other is probably, it's a question that I can't answer directly because I don't think there is an answer.
You're right. It depends on so many things. Your culture, it just depends on so many things. And at the end of the day is what is important to us as women. You know, you don't need to, if you're trying to put an act on to change who you are totally so you can find a man, that's a big problem. So what do you want as women? At least I'm speaking from a woman's perspective. What do you want? Are you a career woman? Do you want to start a business? Or so if you want to start a business, you want to work outside of the home, and then you meet a man who wants a woman who would be, a home caretaker. then you see where the problem is already. There's no point trying to mold yourself into that, because you're going to have regrets and resentments at some point. Okay.
Mm, totally.
That's, yeah, that's what I would say. So we were talking about narcissists. I just want to clear this now. Since you're Trevor, you're a guy, please help us out. Why do you think there's a belief out there that all men are narcissists? Obviously, all men cannot be narcissists, but many women think so. Why is that?
Yeah, that is, I don't know the answer, but I'll give you what I think. And part of what I think is that the narrative around the diet, because narcissism is a diagnosis. You can find it in the DSM-5, which is called the Diagnostical and Statistical Manual. That's where we bring all of our diagnosis that we give in therapy. And I think sometimes we forget that narcissism is an actual mental health diagnosis, and it is also on a spectrum. And there is also narcissistic behavior that we all embody at some point. It doesn't mean that we are fully narcissists, but we do things that might be a bit narcissistic at times. I think, and some women are going to hate me for saying this, I think we overdiagnose our partners with narcissism because it's easier to end the relationship saying like, oh, signed, sealed, delivered. He can't work for me. He can't work for me or anybody else. And if he can't work for me, then that helps me feel more safe and more confident because it's not about me, it's about him. And I mean, I'm not saying that there's not actual narcissists out there. There definitely are. However, it is really, really easy to give yourself an excuse, post all over the place of like, oh yeah, he's a narcissist, when like, it might have had some narcissistic characteristics, but I would be slow to tout the idea that says like he's a narcissist, they're all narcissistic. Sometimes, you know, it's hard to say. Each situation is different. Sometimes part of the responsibility might come back to you. Maybe you're not making a person feel safe, and he doesn't feel safe, and so he doesn't want to open up because he's afraid of getting criticized. And people might say, oh, he's closed down, so he's a narcissist. Narcissistic behavior is very, very, very specific. And you can find all of the symptoms in the DSM-5. But yeah, I think we need a little slow down a little bit on diagnosing each other. I don't know if it's very helpful.
Very, very helpful. People are always quick to point fingers. And trust me, I've been there, done that. But I'm 52 years old. I've learned a lot of lessons in life. And I make sure that I get better with time. You know, we like to diagnose other people when we don't want to look within and diagnose ourselves first.
And sometimes we could even look just within the relationship and say, yeah, that relationship just wasn't very good. It doesn't mean that he's a narcissist. Doesn't mean that I'm a borderline. It doesn't mean that I mean, these are terrible things to just toss out. I mean, and people can, it's very challenging, but people can heal from these personality disorders. It's very rare, very rare. It's very challenging, but I think sometimes also it's hard because we'll take terms like borderline personality disorder, narcissism, all these things, and we almost cast them out as if they're not even valid human beings. And I'm almost, some people are going to hate me for this, but I almost advocate for these people in ways. They're people who have deep insecurities and fears. Doesn't mean what they do is right whatsoever. But I think people can heal. If you're in a relationship with one, I don't think that that's a good thing to continue that relationship, because you trying to heal them is a really, really painful journey. But I think let's slow down on diagnosing. Let's slow down on talking about them like they're just the scum of the earth, because they're human beings. And I think we can create distance and not be in a relationship while still respecting individuals who have bad behavior.
Wonderful, Trevor. Can we take 2 more questions? Actually, one of the questions is for me. Somebody asked, Dr. IYABO, is it okay to make the first move to men? Absolutely, it is. Why not? It is. I made the first move to my husband. I was on Match.com, and I noticed this handsome guy, and I'm like, whoa, he looks good. And of course, he knew how to pull me in. He said, I'm English, and I'm 6'4", and I'm like, he sounds yummy. So yeah, and I sent him a message. I sent him a very brief message, and I said, hi, I noticed you're English. I lived in England for 5 years, and I mentioned something else, something lighthearted, not, oh, you're looking sexy, or oh, you're looking yummy. Don't do that. I sent him something really lighthearted, and that was it. And I'm married, and we're married today. So you
Totally.
can, yeah, you can make the first move, but that doesn't mean you should then take up the responsibility of chasing. Once I
Yeah,
did, yeah, once I did that and he saw me, he did everything from there. He was planning the dates. He asked to talk with me. He asked us to close our profiles. He did everything from there, but I made the first move. The
that's awesome.
second, yeah, is that correct, Trevor? Do you agree?
Yeah, I think that's totally great. That's really great. I love one thing that I think is really important there is that you approached him from a standpoint of fun, and I think that that's really important. I mean, that was my first quality in finding a girl. That was like my first filter when I was dating. I was like, is she fun? And if she's fun, then we start looking at things like humility and whatnot. And if you come out of the gate like really like emotional or like really like sexual, that's kind of like, I mean, I don't know if you want to attract a guy who just is like, oh yeah, she's talking sexy to me, like cool, that's great. That doesn't sound like a terribly respectful person. And also something really emotional, you might find a really desperate person. Just jump in from a standpoint of like teasing and excitement and fun and those kind of things. That's what early stages are all about.
Fun, fun, fun. I put this on my reels all the time. Men also, life is hard enough, women, okay? Life is hard enough. So imagine being with a partner who's serious, who you can't have fun with, who you can't. I mean, my husband and I, we laugh and tease each other 90% of the time. If you see us in a household, you'll be like, is it a comedy show or something here? But we do have our serious talks, but we just have fun. He's 59, I'm 52. I mean, if you can't have fun in your 50s, when are you going to have time? So women, as much as we are looking for fun, men are also looking for fun. They're looking for lightheartedness. Okay, don't take your neediness to men. If you're still needy or you're still in an emotional state where you're not feeling too good about life, heal first before you start dating. Last question, Trevor, and then I'll let you go and people can follow you and get more of what you have. So this lady says, how do you cope with a guy you both are dating but barely have time for himself? Okay, he barely has time for himself, okay?
Mm.
They're dating, but the guy doesn't have time for himself. He's always busy at work 6 days a week, and he stays at church most of the day on Sunday. I have a one-liner for that, but Trevor, I'm sure you can deal with that very quickly.
Well, I don't know. I'd love to hear your one liner. That sounds more powerful because, yeah, go ahead.
uh, my one-liner is, my dear friend, my dear sister, if this guy really wanted to see you, he would make the time. He could be the president of the United States. Even if he works 10 days a week, he will make the time to see you if he really wants to. That's my answer. But Trevor, I want to hear from you.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in what you said. That there's that if the relationship and that's the thing too is that I mean, how long has the relationship been going on? Or some of my questions. Because if this is happening in a committed like marriage, or maybe we're like years into it makes a difference. If you've started dating just like a couple of weeks or so, like maybe your expectation is too high. Maybe we're not quite there yet to be around each other that much. Maybe it's a 1 day a week, and that's what the relationship and the level of the commitment is calling for. I think there's a lot of factors that kind of go into that. I think in a deep committed relationship, what you just mentioned is really true.
Trevor, thank you so much for your time. Thank you. Now I'll even be glued to your page even more because no, honestly, I'm married, but I do get a lot of good tips from your page. I have learned a lot of things, and I've also been reassured by some things I've learned during my divorce years because I did a lot of reading. So when I hear you repeat it, I'm like, oh, okay, I'm doing the right thing. So I really do want to thank you No, honestly, I know you're younger than me, but for me, I can learn from anyone. This is the thing about me. I'm a sponge. If I find what you put out positive, I will be glued to your page. So thank you for putting out such good information. I hope that many people from my platform will follow you and they will learn a lot from you. So thank you so very much for your time. I really appreciate it. And thank you to everyone who joined. There's still many other questions, but please follow Trevor, send him a DM, and he'll be able to share with you his websites and all of his other content. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Trevor. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.